Purpose.
Hello, welcome to Youth of Purpose, a show that is here to give you a platform as a young person to be able to contribute to what happens here in Uganda. Everything under the sun of our concern. We want to be able to put a brick in Uganda becoming better. A few years to come, we'll be able to say Uganda is because we are. And when we're talking about Uganda, we don't only focus on our country, but we also focus on East Africa. We focus on Africa. The Pan-African spirit is what we're going to be talking here, and we're going to be measuring on the past successes of Africa and also looking at building for the future. We'll be putting so much of our effort on a borderless Africa. How can that be able to help the young people to empower ourselves, but also help Africa become the continent that we all dream it to be? Africa is the next big thing. Everywhere to do with the economy, looking at the population, but also looking at how the East African community is growing. We will be able to see, for example, political integration coming to us, the East African people, and what effect is that going to bring about? What are some of the challenges that we face as integration of the East African community, for example, is concerned, but also bringing the African people together? What are some of those challenges that we are facing right now as the African Union, and how can all that be solved majorly to help and empower the young African people? With me today, I have a very young person who is enthusiastic and interested in all affairs to do with young people. Roy Rugumari, welcome to Youth of Purpose.
Thank you so much for having me. It's indeed a pleasure to be on this very critical show that has the voices of young people who make 77% of the entire population of the continent, to have their voices on the forefront, and rather not periphery or as an interest group on the sidelines, but rather on the very forefront of these conversations, because we are the ones supposed to push these conversations, given the numbers, given the advantage of youthful zeal and energy. So I'm very appreciative that you've invited me to this show, but also that you hold this show and bring young people to have their voices heard, and also make their meaningful contribution towards a better country, a better continent, and better humanity as a whole.
Roy, what makes you so enthusiastic about the African continent, or what today we can say Africanacity? Yes.
I'm very enthusiastic, particularly because I am an African. To borrow the words of our forefather, Kwame Nkrumah, he says he's an African not because he was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in him. And I'm also very interested in socio-economic transformation. So, and we cannot dream of changing our own state, changing our own country, without putting into perspective Africa as a whole, because we cannot speak of the strategic security of Uganda without having Congo in mind, without having Kenya in mind. Take for instance, remember recently in 2007, there was something that happened in Kenya, and it affected all of us. So it matters what happens anywhere. So I'm looking at an Africa where a genocide in Rwanda matters to all of us, and it's our responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen in the first place. What is happening in Somalia is a matter of concern to all of us, because it affects trade in Tanzania, everywhere in South Sudan. What happens everywhere should be a matter of concern to everyone. And the freedom, the liberties, the progress of one is and should be taken as the progress of all.
Saying issues that are happening everywhere in Africa actually should concern everyone. Do you think African young people are as enthusiastic or as interested as you are in matters to do with what is happening in other African countries?
Well, for sure, we have a huge population of people, not even only young people, but people generally that are uninterested in matters continental or even matters beyond their own village. Okay, their thinking is very shallow, limited, or what the head of state would call parochial, and their world outlook is to the extent of their own surrounding. And I would understand, totally understand, because what causes that is their interconnectedness with everyone else. And that is what should concern us. That is because when it concerns us and we solve that issue, it is what is going to cause them to be interested. Take, for instance, you are not producing anything. Why should it concern you that
You're not exporting.
yeah, you're not exporting anything. You're not in wealth production. You're not in wealth creation. You're not even at the level of meaningful wealth consumption. Because even if you are not creating wealth, but you were meaningfully consuming wealth, if the kind of perfume you use was not coming in from Ethiopia, it would concern you what is happening in Ethiopia. So that is why it is a concern of every government, or it should be a concern of every government, to build the capacity of the people to take part in wealth creation and therefore be able to consume wealth. And that can easily
exactly
cause people to be...
If I'm to cut you
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that, one, you're saying actually what can attract these young people or
To be interested in these matters.
Matters a lot, because if I'm not going to see actually the interconnectedness that I have with Kenyans,
Yes.
with Rwandans, with Nigerians, at least maybe if we say Kenyans and Tanzanians and Rwandans,
Yes.
you will find that at least you'll find people that speak the same language. You'll find people that have have intermarried.
Yes.
So there are things that do connect them. But if you find someone who is here in Uganda and then they are taking interest to get to know what is happening in Nigeria, which was the case actually.
Yes.
Pre and post independence, African young people were so much interested in what was happening in each and every African country. So if we are not having that interest or benefit that we think we do get from each other, it means people are not going to matter.
Well, what the context then was that generally Africa was undergoing a revolution, particularly against colonialism, oppression, suppression of the African people, and it mattered to everyone that the entire continent was free, particularly for people like Kwame Nkrumah, for people like Mzee Julius Nyerere, for Mzee Abdel Gamel Nasser of Egypt. It mattered to them that for the whole African continent to be free, each and every country had to be free. And therefore, that was the driving force that pushed them to move everywhere. And now, that context is not alive to us now. What then pushes us in our current context? Well, we have the advantage of social media, that is, it is easy for you to talk to someone in Rwanda. But then, if you do not have 100,000, because you're not creating wealth, or even if the border was open, you won't travel to Rwanda, even to visit the person. Okay? Even if it was free entry and free exit to Nairobi, you'll at least need 100,000 to go to purchase a bus ticket to go there. And what would you be going there to do? To simply visit, or you get? So if you were going there to sell eggs, you'd be more interested in knowing the egg market in Kenya. Yes.
I want to disagree with you.
Sure.
When you say there were issues to do with the oppression, there wars, I can tell you that today we have insecurity almost all over Africa. We have wars going on in Congo.
Yes.
We have insecurity going on in South Sudan. We have insecurity in Central African Republic. We have insecurities in Mali. We have a lot of terrorism in almost all West African countries. Talk of Nigeria, the kidnapping of students and all that. We have insecurity almost everywhere. So why doesn't that unite us as African young people to say no, this cannot continue to happen? If the oppression by then was by the colonialists, today maybe it's by our leaders. So how come the African young people are not taking interest to say we need to come up together and fight against this injustice that is killing the African dream, the African future?
Well, even then there is a class of people that furthers such conversations. But look at Congo, take for instance. How many African countries are there? South Africa is there, Uganda is there, at some point Rwanda was there, Burundi was there to try and solve. Kenya is there to try and solve the matter there. Look at Somalia. Yes. Look at Somalia, take for instance. Burundi is there, Rwanda was there, Uganda is there. Look at Central African Republic, Uganda is there. But after solving an issue, or after making an effort to solve an issue. So the idea that these tyranny or these negative forces can easily cause people to interconnect is partially true. But also there are other issues that cause people to connect even more, like trade. When you look at the African Continental Free Trade Area, you find people are moving. But recently, there was a CEO forum in Rwanda, and Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, says he needs 35 visas to move across the country. And that costs him money. Okay? Now, if the richest man on the continent is complaining about how much money he's losing to simply move around the continent, and I don't think Dangote would be moving to simply talk and take beers and move away. He probably is moving with money, with business, but it's giving him so much hard time. How much more then would it give me so much hard time to move? Look at the currency. That's just visas, 35 visas to move across the continent. The currencies, we have 54 currencies on the continent. And there are very few countries where you will go and find your country's currency for exchange. That means for me to go and transact in Zimbabwe, take for instance, I don't think I'll find the Ugandan currency there. So it means I'll have to change the Ugandan currency into perhaps the US dollar and lose money in that exchange, and then travel there and exchange the US dollar into the Zimbabwean currency and lose more money there. Okay? So on borderlessness, on interconnectedness of the people, those are the right kind of conversations.
Great.
But our people should be having.
Borderless Africa, interconnectedness is where we come back. A conversation about Africa is one that I can tell you can have for hours, for days, and it will really still be heating up. We go in for a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching Youth of Purpose, a show for the young people. We talk everything under the sun concerning us. How can we be able to contribute to what happens in our lives, better our countries, and make Africa actually a great continent. Today I have Roy Rugumayo, and we're discussing the past successes of Africa and looking at building for the future. But we focus on a borderless Africa. How does it help to empower the African young people to get connected and actually be able to solve the African problems together.
Yeah.
Roy, you're bringing up the issue of borderless Africa. Before we go to that, what are some of those things that you look at, the milestones that Africa has had, and you're like, wow, we do thank God for we have gotten here?
Of course, we do thank the gods for one that
You thank the gods, you thank God.
God, Africa, we thank the gods for one, particularly the fight against colonialism. That was a major fight. Okay, so and we succeeded at it. Secondly, the overthrow of the apartheid regime in South Africa, that was another milestone. The formation of the Organization of the African Union and its transformation into the AU.
Then the different blocks.
Yes, then the different blocks. And those blocks are the engine that will finally integrate the continent. Of course, with some of our leaders and the vision they had, we thank God for the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Julius Nyereres, the Thomas Sankaras, the Kenneth Kaundas, great brains, great people. His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, of course, one of those very sharp revolutionaries that had, those who are still alive, have the vision of Africa at heart.
How do you compare the three independence and post-independence leaders that Africa has had?
They were all good, depending on the contexts. You see, one who commented that every generation has its own mandate and must realize it to execute or to betray that mandate. Those are the likes of Sekabaka Mwanga, Omukama Kabalega, Chief Awich of Payera, had their own generational mandate, which they executed, whether successfully or unsuccessfully. That can be a discussion we have. The likes of Semakula Mulumba, the likes of Apollo Milton Obote, the Benedicto Chiwanukas, also had their own generational mandate, which they realized and worked to execute. Whether they failed or executed it finally is a discussion we can have. The likes of, yes.
The efforts of leaders of those days,
yes,
are really amazing. That someone could be in the struggle, as we call it today,
yes,
for 10, 15, actually some 20 years, when they are fighting for a cause.
Yes.
But today, as you find someone is in the struggle for just 1 year, and because they've not been able to get something out of it, they are here, they are there. And
yeah, but also those people also existed then. And the others who commit to a struggle for over 20 years also exist now. The likes of Dr. Kizza Besigye, the likes of Raila Odinga in Kenya, the likes of Sonko in Senegal. They committed to a struggle for a very long time, and some the struggles have come through, some they haven't. The likes of Nelson Mandela, just here in 1994, by the way, committed to a struggle for a very long time, 27 years in prison and all that.
What had you mentioned those that were not committed for?
Yeah, they were there. They definitely were there. There is one revolutionary who commented that if he had to go back into the struggle, he would reduce the number of people he went with, because some were simply distractions, useless, and the time he would spend for that entire cause of the struggle would even reduce by half after knowing what they knew after. The likes of President Museveni, the struggle for a very long time, over 20 years, in the bush for over 5 years, and still currently in the struggle for socio-economic transformation for over 30 years. That's consistency.
Looking at the current leadership that we're getting in Africa, and looking at West Africa, the coups that we're having, with the leadership of Mamadou Doumbouya, Captain Traoré. What picture do you get with these young African leaders that are coming up, but majorly those that are coming through
the coups,
who actually are getting popular and doing some of the things that look like those revolutionaries that we used to have then?
Yes. I think we need to understand the context of West Africa particularly and their colonial background, which was assimilation. Okay? We have leaders there who are French men in black skin. We have generals there who live in France, in Paris, in all this luxury. We have leaders there who have mortgaged off their countries. Why do you think the coups there are not being carried out by generals and brigadiers? Why is it captains, low-ranking officials? Because they're the ones on ground with the people, with the soldiers. The high-ranking officials are in Europe living life large. We have a president somewhere in West Africa who has lived in Intercontinental Hotel for the last over 20 years. So the context of their people, I think these are coming up to liberate their countries. No wonder they have the support of the masses. They are cancelling deals that were signed to sell off oil, gold reserves, and I think I would understand. Well, how they come into power is something that is debatable, but also the question of what extent is democracy there? How do those people define democracy? Is a discussion we must allow them to have.
Amazing. We got it short there. Coming to the issue of a borderless Africa, how important is it today, and also what is the possibility of us achieving that, and what impact can it be able to have on the young people of Africa?
A borderless Africa is possible. And it's not meant to say we must have no boundaries, it must be free exit and free entry, because that also comes with its own security challenges and all that. But the borderlessness comes to the extent of ease of movement, of goods, of services, of labor, of capital. How much do I pay when I go to seek knowledge in the University of Nairobi versus elsewhere?
Actually, I keep asking myself why when you're looking at the fee structures for different universities, you'll find for citizens
it's different. Yes.
For foreigners,
it's different.
Africans,
yes.
It's a different structure.
Now, here in Uganda, the government has quite solved it, particularly for East Africans. That if you're from Kenya, Tanzania, South Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, in public universities, you'll pay the same as citizens. Yes. The same should be extended to others who are of African descent, because our problems are the same. When you look at the strategic bottlenecks hindering Africa's socio-economic transformation, they are the same: the weak states, the infrastructure, the low value addition. So it matters to us to work together towards solving these challenges.
I think actually it can be one of the ways to help the young Africans connect.
Yes.
If I can be freely if I can be able to freely move to Nairobi and attend to any university, be able to move to South Africa, to any university without that extra cost, it will make sense. But also, like you talked about the visas, if I didn't need a visa to be able to move to all these African countries, it will be easy for me to be able to move all over. But also when it comes to doing business, if we can be able to, either reduce or actually do away with some of the
The
unnecessary
tariffs, yes.
taxes, then it would help that we can connect. Actually, I think it can be the first step to connect the African people.
Yes, but also you look at, I totally agree, more especially with the social interconnection. The likes of Mzee Julius Nyerere would understand the need for interconnection. He had studied here, he had lived here. The likes of Mwai Kibaki of Kenya, he had studied here in Uganda. The likes of our own president, he had studied in Tanzania. Mzee Ndugu Rugunda, they had studied in Tanzania. And these people are that connected because they have grown up with each other. They have looked at the Tanzanian context, the Kenyan context, and to them, they have embraced it. But we are also moving towards that direction, more especially with these regional blocks being the biggest driving factor. The East African community is doing well. We have the customs union, and it's doing quite well. The ECOWAS is also doing well. The SADC is also doing well. But when these regional blocks finally master the art of integration, I think finally we shall look at the African free continental area. And
I'll cut you short because of time. We'll be able to get some other time maybe to continue with this discussion, because it's a broad and interesting one. But as we conclude, I'll just give you about 1 minute for you to be able to tell us what you think we can be able to do to interest African young people in the matters of Africa.
Thank you so much. There is so much great potential for Africa, more especially when we come together. When you look at the DRC, 24 trillion US dollars of untapped resources. When you look at our own population.
I was reading an article yesterday of actually how Congo should be in the first 3 economies of the world. Yes,
the USA is worth 21 trillion US dollars, and it's the biggest economy. China is 17 trillion US dollars. Congo, untapped resources, 24 trillion US dollars. And the whole of Africa is worth 3.1 trillion US dollars. 3.1. That's equivalent to India alone. So there is so much great potential in Africa, and the greatest of them all is our own African young people. It's an untapped resource which, if we allow to move freely, to interact and interconnect, to get skills, knowledge, we have the capacity to be the greatest we can be as a continent.
Thank you so much, Roy, for speaking to us. I do believe that conversations like this can help us as Africans to wake up, but also trigger our leaders to get to understand that actually, as young people, we also think about our continent and we look up to the future that they are creating, but also we would need to get involved, participate in shaping the future of Africa. I thank you so much for watching Youth of Purpose. I do believe we are transforming your lives, but we are also transforming the lives of us all Africans, and we shall make Uganda better and your lives better. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ivan Tumkunde. See you next time.
Youth of Purpose.